I am an alcoholic addict, and it started when I was about 8, 9 years old. I got introduced to marijuana. Started off as just curiosity, and with that, I eventually graduated over time. I grew up in a great household. We weren't poor. I was raised cheap. There is a difference, but um, I had nice things growing up, but sometimes I had to earn it. And but where it all started was with my father. Coming from Mexican culture, we tend to celebrate everything with alcohol, and the goods and the bads. And I think that goes with any culture. And I found out that my father was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And with that came the emotional trauma and knowing that he's going to die at some point. My childhood was then, well, I don't want to say taken from me, but I had to grow up quick. Fast forward, he eventually passed away in 2014, and I lost my best friend and someone who I needed at that time. I was in my 20s, and at that point in time, I had already been experimenting a little bit with alcohol. I started late in life. I didn't start real early, but that's when it went just downhill from there. I started drinking heavy, started drowning myself in alcohol. The reason why I did what I did was alcohol it doesn't taste great, and the consequences of it, waking up hungover and next to a toilet or however you wake up, right? That's not the feeling I was shooting for. I was shooting for trying to get away from what I didn't want to feel. Alcohol then led me to cocaine and crystal meth. I was not an IV user at any point. I would, snort it. But the reason why I did that was so that I could continue drinking, so I could continue hiding from my emotions. And doing so, I lost myself completely, altogether. I started losing faith. I started losing hope. I'm a father of 5, and as much as I like to think that I was a great father during those times, I really wasn't. I mean, the saying goes, the lights are on when no one's home. I was present, yes, but I was a provider, yeah, but was I really there? Not really. Could I have been the best father without the drugs and alcohol? Of course. So enough was enough. Was in a relationship for many years, for over 10 years. And of course that relationship, went down the hole as well. And I have a lot to do with it as well. One, you can't force love on anybody, especially if you're not who you are, if you're not being true with who you are, if you're not who that person met at the beginning and you slowly change over time. It's hard to have someone love you when you don't love yourself. So enough was enough, and that had to come to an end. But first and foremost, I had to get right. I had to get right with God. So June 7th was my last spin-off date. Got into an ugly argument, which had been going on for years and for weeks prior to this. And of course, that was my excuse. Every argument, every emotional backlash, I was like, hey, you know what? I don't need this. And, I'd go and drink and go buy some drugs and, and continue hiding from my emotions that I didn't want to deal with at that moment. Because that's what we do. We drown ourselves and we hide from the reality of it. We send ourselves into, our own paradise, our own private island. And alcohol was my best friend. It was my lover. It was my companion. It was one of the hardest relationships I had to break up with. Not the mother of my children, not losing my father, not losing the relationship with my family or my children. The hardest thing of it all was having to break up with alcohol, having to break up with drugs, because now I just lost something that was always going to be there for me. I had a grief over that. I grieved harder over the alcohol, the cocaine, the methamphetamine than I did with my own father. And the reason why is because alcohol was there for me. The drugs were there for me. They gave me courage, they gave me confidence, they gave me high self-esteem. They put me in a good, chipper, happy mood. But that was only temporary, right? Because eventually, after my little spin-off, after my days, you get sober and you're back to being miserable. Now you're dealing with guilt and shame. And what do? I don't want to be feeling like guilty and shameful. So what I do, you go back. And it's just a never ending cycle. So June 7th was my last day. Enough was enough. I was going to go to work. I didn't. Went to my local spot. Went to the bar. And finally it was near last call. I'm sitting there and I got a beer in my hand. I got Coke in one sock. I got meth in the other sock. And it hit me. And I'm just like, what am I doing here? Right? Why am I doing this all over again? It hit. It was time to do right. It was time to get right. And so I finished my beer, take 2 more in my pocket, and I take the walk. And I walk about 4 or 5 miles to the closest hospital. And as I'm doing so, of course, I'm trying to enjoy my last spin off because I'm dedicated this time. I've tried many times to get clean and sober on my own. I tried to convince myself I could be a moderate drinker. I could be responsible. I could only drink 2 for tonight. I could only, Coke on the weekends, or I could only do meth a little bit of the time, right? I tried all that and it failed every time. There's no such thing as being a functioning alcoholic or a moderate drug user. Either you're a full-blown drug user or you're sober. Which one is it, right? And I've tried. And so of course, knowing that this could be it, of course, I've got my 2 beers. They're hot by now, right? And the ugly addict in us, like, we don't care if it's hot. We don't care if the Coke is a little wet, right? We don't care if the meth isn't its best. We're still gonna use it. We're gonna abuse the shit out of it, right? So here I am walking down the street, and I can see the hospital get closer and closer. So I'm sitting there, I'm just trying to get my last spin. And finally I hit the doors and I just break down. Depression at its most. And I go up to the front desk, and obviously they see I'm a wreck. I smell like shit, right? I had just walked 4 miles in the summertime. I'm reeking of alcohol. I'm starting to reeking out the meth and the Cokes. I had already been on this spin for a couple of days prior to this date. And I say the magic words, right? Not feeling right. I need help. Feeling suicidal. Cool. So they put me in the behavioral health unit. About 7 days in, I finally get my wits. I finally come to get right on medication. And eventually the conversation starts about, what do you want to do about discharge? Do you want to go home? Well, in the perfect world, yeah, I would love to go home. But I can't. Something's telling me I'm not ready for it. As a matter of fact, get me a Catholic priest up here. Well, why do you want to do that? I was like, I got a lot on my chest. I got a lot on my shoulders. See, when I was raised Catholic, and I kind of veered away from it. But the God of my understanding was a damning God. You do bad, I'm keeping tabs, I'm keeping score, right? So I felt like I had to let this off my chest. So what I do, I confessed. Now, mind you, the last time I did a confession, I was probably like, 11, 13 years old. At my age now, 32, we're talking about 20-some odd years of sin. So finally, I let it all out. And doing so was the breaking point of just relief. No more weight on my shoulders, no more pressure, no more doubt, no more shame. Now I'm ready to get right because I finally gave myself to God. Whatever your higher power is, it has to be stronger than you. And if you can't figure out a higher power, go choose a wave, right? Try to stop a wave. That is something that is stronger and more powerful than you are, right? So finding my higher power helped out, and I was able to make the journey. And so they said, well, let's try rehab. I said, fine, let's do it inpatient. And inpatient is where it all made sense. Got to learn my emotions. That's most important. In order to get sober, in order to get right, you have to be brutally honest with yourself. Until you get right and you want to be right, you need to be honest with yourself. If you're not going to be honest, then go and come back when you're ready to get honest. But until you're ready to be honest with yourself, you're really to admit that you are powerless over these, whatever your ism is. And your ism is I, self, and me, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's drug addiction, whatever it is. When you're ready to be honest and stop being selfish and self-centered, this is when it works. And it does work. I had to be brutally honest with myself. I had to admit that, yes, I was a piece of shit. Yes, I wasn't the best father. Yes, I was a half-assed worker. But yes, I'm capable of being more than just that. Yes, I'm ready to admit that that's my past and that is not going to be my future. That's all part of just being brutally honest with yourself. Second is fellowship. Find a fellowship. Get a couple of days of sobriety under your belt, but as cliche as it sounds, they say that time heals. I didn't understand that, right? Because as an addict, I want now, right? Well, I want my life back, and I want my life back now. It doesn't happen that way. You have to do the steps. You have to work a program. You have to get honest with yourself and find God. Find a higher power of your understanding. So that's what I did. I joined the fellowship. I'm what's called a cross-dresser, right? Because I bounce from both AA and NA, right? Because it clicks, it makes sense. A fellowship is my medicine. I have to take it every day. I have to at least dedicate an hour. What's an hour, right? An hour is nothing. But what you get in those rooms, you're no different than anyone else. And I got to learn that. And I got to learn and work my steps and work my program. And that's my experience. And I'm grateful and blessed to say I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and drug addict. Because miracles do happen in recovery. They don't happen quickly. They don't happen fast, but they do happen. Slowly but surely it does happen. Just as long as you give yourself the opportunity of every night going to sleep without having to pick up a drink or a drug, you just gave yourself a chance. You just gave yourself an opportunity. Repeat that process and do it again. I'm blessed to say that I'm 196 days clean and sober today. That's over 6 months. And it didn't happen like that. It was one day at a time. I used to go to the bar and say, I'll take another beer, I'll take another Dos Equis, I'll take another shot. Now I get to say, I'll take another 24. I'll take another 24 hours being sober. I'd rather take that over than that. I'm happy to say now that because of it, miracles do happen in my life. I now have my children. I get to go visit my children. I have a great job that's paying me handsomely well, right? And my fines and from my past are making way of being resolved now. I'm slowly getting my life back, and this is just the beginning. This is only 6 months in, and it feels like this is all I wanted. I can't believe it's happening, but it does happen, and it happens one day at a time. I'm an alcoholic and I'm an addict, and that's my story.